good evening again, everyone. My name is Trey Robinson. Well, I was DC Bike Ambassador Coordinator, and I want to welcome you all to our Riding in the Fall webinar. Uh, Again, I will be sharing some helpful tips and information about biking in the fall. So if this is your first time biking in the fall, or whether you're just trying to get some new information, I'll have a lot of things to share with you, and I'll be able to answer some of your questions as well. So autumn is a great time for change. So some of it is great. The leaves changing colors, a new season and new endeavors, and a welcome relief from the summer heat as well. But that change also brings in some new challenges as well for those who get around by bike. So in this webinar, I'll be sharing some tips for cycling in autumn to help you enjoy your ride during some of the cooling season. So, just to go over what we'll be covering today, we'll be going over some helpful tips to ensure you and your bike are prepared for your next ride. We'll also talk about checking the weather and what things to look for when checking so you aren't surprised by any sudden weather changes. We'll also go over some gear and accessories that can be useful as your ride gets chilly, windy, or even wet. We'll also go over some tips for staying warm. So yes, again, it is getting much cooler, and the rides will be a lot different from your summer ride. So some tips for staying warm and some things that we'll talk about as well. We'll go over road hazards and things that you should look out for on the road, and things that you should avoid. So we'll also talk about some alternatives if it rains, if it gets too cold, or even if you just get too tired. And then lastly, we'll go over some post-ride tips to help you relax and ensure that your bike will be in good shape for your next ride. So now that we have a full list of everything that we will cover today, let's jump right in. So in this first section, we'll be talking about preparing for your ride. So now is a good time to make sure that your bike is well tuned up so you aren't working any harder than you have to or running into any major issues on your ride. So a few checks should be done before each time that you ride, before each time that you head out on a ride. So these checks are known as an ABC quick check. So the ABC quick check is an acronym that helps you identify key parts on your bike to check before your ride. So in just a second, we will walk through each of these, which is also in this lovely picture in the top right as well. So let's walk through them. So to do your ABC quick check, you will start off with A, which is short for air. You'll be checking your tires for proper air pressure. You may have to top off your tire pressure every few days, which is not uncommon. A general rule is that you should pump your tires at least once or twice a week, but if you don't go out that often, before every ride is probably a good idea. It doesn't matter the kind of bike that you have, whether it's tube or tubeless, the tire pressure will go down naturally over time, even if there is not an air leak somewhere in the rubber. So it's important that you have your tires set to the right pressure when riding your bike, usually indicated in PSI that is found on the side of your tire. Riding with the tire pressure outside of the recommended range can cause damage to those tires. If your tires get low enough, it becomes more likely that you will puncture the inner tube that is inside. So next in our ABC quick check, we will cover the B, which is short for brakes. We want to first make sure that they are both working properly. So giving your front and rear brakes a quick squeeze and trying to move the bike just to make sure that they are actually locking up the wheels. So you can also use a barrel adjuster if you have one to tighten them so they are more responsive when you pull them. So the next thing that we are going to check is the C. This is short for chain, but I also like to include a few different parts in there as well. So we'll talk about that as well. So the C is short for chain, but also consists of a few other parts that start with the C. This can be your chain, your cassette, your chain ring, and I know this doesn't start with the C, but your derailleur as well. These are all part of your drivetrain that helps get your bike moving as you pedal it. So these are all parts that you want to check for. So when checking your chain, the main thing is making sure that it's actually on the bike. sometimes when you transport your bike around, your chain may get knocked off of the chain ring. So doing a quick pedal just to make sure that it's actually on, and shifting through your gears just to make sure that all your gears are shifting properly. So, and then I think the last most important thing about checking your chain is to make sure that it is properly lubed, which I will talk about actually at the end of this presentation in some post-ride tips as well. So again, your chain, you're gonna, or your C check, you're gonna check your chain, cassette, and derailleur. Again, just doing a quick pedal, getting your gears caught up, making sure that your chain is on, and shifting through them just to make sure that they are all working. And then lastly, a part of the ABC quick check, which isn't shown in that lovely photo, is the quick in your quick check. So you're going to be checking your quick releases. So a lot of bikes have quick releases on the wheels and on different parts just to allow you to easily remove parts from your bike. So again, making sure that your quick releases are nice and tight, especially the ones found on your wheels and the seat posts. Those are probably the most common, but if you do have a folding bike, you may have quick releases that allow you to compact the bike more. So again, making sure that those are all nice and tight are going to be essential in doing your ABC quick check. So again, just doing a quick recap, your ABC quick check, you're checking the A for air, the B for brakes, the C for mainly your chain, but some other parts as well. And then the final check is checking your quick releases just to make sure that they're all nice and tight. So an ABC quick check can be done in less than a minute and in the comfort of your own home. But if you would like a licensed mechanic to look over your bike, bike shops offer some basic and advanced tune-ups to make sure that your bike is good to ride. So after you check over your bike, you can begin to pack some necessities that'll get you through your ride. So I have a list of some necessities that I think is helpful, but also pack what you would normally bring on your ride, or what you think would be helpful to get you through your ride. So um, so after you've checked over your bike, you can begin to pack these necessities. You can pack them in backpacks, handlebar bags, or a basket, panniers, or even pulling them in your trailer. So some things worth including are water and snacks to keep you hydrated and energized. A lock can be helpful just in case you need to go inside of a store to grab something, or just to go inside of a building to get some warmth. Money for food or finding another way at home if it gets too cold can also be helpful to have on hand. Some other things that are worth bringing that aren't listed here are some tools or extra tube or a patch kit just in case you catch a flat or need to make any adjustments to your bike while you're out on your ride. So I think some of those essential tools can be probably like a multi-tool, which has a few different tools in kind of uh, one thing. So you're not having to bring multiple tools with you. You have a multi-tool that is useful for a lot of different things on your bike. So and then the last part of preparing for your bike is planning your route. So when preparing for your ride, remember to plan your route carefully. So know what places are along your route that you can stop to for a bathroom break, or to fill up water, or in the case of some of these colder days, just to get a bit of warmth from some of those buildings. So leave yourself plenty of time if you're commuting so you aren't running late. Consider leaving out 15 or so minutes earlier than you normally would, which can make the difference just in case you need to take a break or run into any mechanical problems. So now that you are packed, there are only a few more things to consider before you head out on your ride. Lights are going to be super helpful to make sure that you are going to be able to see what's on the road and others can see you as well. So these are especially important as the fall season, it gets darker much earlier than in the summer. So being prepared by having front and rear lights will ensure that you can see while riding, and again, so others can see you as well. So there are lots of different lights available for different purposes. Just like cars have regular and high beams, be thoughtful and considerate of other folks who are around you. So very blinky or bright lights can be medically unsafe for some folks. So don't put others at risk just to win the most visible award. So I think with this being said, you usually have the option of angling your light. So instead of having your lights pointed straight ahead, which can be blinding others that are riding towards you, you want to point them towards the ground a bit so they aren't blinding the person as you are riding towards them. So LED Christmas lights around your frame can also not only look great, but make you more visible when riding after sunset. So during the fall, it gets darker much earlier, so stay prepared by having your lights handy and charged. So if you have replaceable batteries, consider bringing an extra set just in case your batteries die out. If they are USB rechargeable and you could commute, consider keeping a charger for them at your workplace. Reflectors are another good way to stay visible. So anything reflective on moving parts will help you stay visible as well. So putting reflectors on moving parts such as your wheels, your pedals, or even attaching them directly to your body. I have a handy reflector that can just slap on, and I would put this on my ankle. So as I'm pedaling, this is a constant movement that will get seen, especially since it reflects as well. So if you don't like riding at night, you can consider riding during the midday. It is also typically cooler in the mornings and the evenings, which is something else that we'll cover in our next slide as well. So to avoid a super chilly ride when the sun is at its peak, so you can use the sun to stay warm. So again, this leads us into our next topic, which covers checking the weather and choosing when and when not to ride. So riding in the fall can present a number of different elements. So checking the forecast before heading out can be super helpful. So checking the hourly weather forecast can be helpful so you know what the weather will be like when leaving and heading back to your destination. So first, you would want to check the temperature to get an idea of what type of day it is. So temperature may change between morning and evening. So prepare for your ride to and from your destination by checking the weather for both times. So a few questions to ask yourself are, will it be cloudy? Will it be sunny? Will it be a chance of rain? Do you need to bring a rain jacket or a light jacket just in case it gets cool? Again, these are all questions that you want to ask yourself after checking the weather and preparing for your ride. So a few other things to pay attention to when checking the weather are the rain percentage, or is the rain percentage. The image here in the slide shows that the rain percentage during the day is at 20%, but changes to 97% at night. So again, this was this past Monday, so this is not reflective on today. But again, it gives you a good idea of if there's going to be a chance of rain. So this is helpful to know just in case you're leaving during the day and returning at night. Another thing to look out for are the wind gusts. So the winds are identified by miles per hour, and this image shows that winds will be around 10 to 15 miles per hour during the day and about 5 to 10 miles per hour at night. Strong winds can affect your riding, potentially making you work harder to push against the wind. Winds around or under 5 miles per hour should not affect your riding as much as some of those higher numbers, but keep this in mind as you plan your ride. So, again, if you're seeing some of those winds go up into the higher numbers, so 10 and above, those are going to be really strong winds. And though that is one thing to consider when riding. Again, especially if you're riding against the wind, that will make your pedaling a lot more harder to do as well. So the last thing to pay attention to uh, is what time the sun will set. So if you plan on riding after sunset, as mentioned before, plan to bring lights and other reflective materials that will help you stay visible, especially if you're riding in traffic or on trails. So remember that daylight savings ends November 7th. So it's approaching in about a week. It will be getting darker much earlier. So if you aren't a fan of biking in the dark, plan your ride so you are getting back before sunset, which once the time change, it was sunset will be around 5:30 opposed to about 6:30 currently. So now that we've covered what to pay attention to when checking the weather, let's move on to some tips about gear and accessories that can be helpful for fall riding. And just doing a quick recap, the photo on the bottom left is also kind of like what you might see when riding, especially if you're like me and wear glasses. It may get foggy or hazy, so that is one thing to keep in mind as you're riding. And I guess is a big part of safety when you're riding. You want to be able to see what's ahead of you. So if you don't think that you will be able to bike through some of these conditions, consider taking a break up under some awning or anywhere just to give yourself a moment, or letting the rain die down even. Cool. So, fall weather gear and other accessories. So, I love the fall, but one of my least favorite things about riding during the season is the wildly different temperatures between the morning and the midday. So, again, you might wake up, it might be super cool, but midday it'd be warm, and then later on in the day, it would be back cool again. So, this is something that I don't look forward to, but I will be sharing some helpful tips to prepare you if you happen to be going through some of those daily changes as well. So the best way to combat some of these changes in temperatures between the morning and midday is by dressing in layers. So layer a jacket, warm socks, a hat or mittens in the morning, and then taking them off midday when it is the hottest. So remember that biking also warms you up. So you may not need all those layers, but we'll talk a little bit more in detail about that shortly. So the first thing that we're going to talk about, the first thing I want to say is that clothing is up to you. So wearing what makes you feel comfortable, and also keep in mind that what works for you may not work for everyone else. So again, back to layers. Layers are going to be helpful for keeping you warm. So moisture wicking under layers will keep you warm during those colder months, but won't absorb moisture if you start to sweat. So long sleeves underneath a jacket or a vest can also work well to in keeping you warm. So one thing to keep in mind is that as you begin riding, your body will begin to warm up. So it is recommended to wear items that you can take off once you get hot. So uh, sometimes there may be items like maybe a jumpsuit or something that isn't as easy to take off opposed to like a jacket or something that you can kind of shed in just a few seconds. So consider, sorry, the next one is going to be breathable helmets. So we talked about layers. So breathable helmets can help cool you down if you are getting hot. So helmets with multiple openings provide good airflow to keep you cool and to help cool you down. So I know this might not be ideal for some of those colder days. And the opposing thing is to, if you're looking for a helmet that is warmer or with more insulation, it will have less openings on that to kind of keep your head warm. But again, as you begin to start biking, you'll start to get warm. So having that airflow to kind of cool your head off will ultimately cool your body off as well. So, and about layers, so you can consider bringing a few layers. So one set for the AM and one set for the PM. The same thing goes for like a jacket or a sweater situation. It is not uncommon for you to like stop like halfway between your commute to shed a layer or something. That is perfectly okay. Some days you will honestly just guess wrong on the amount of layers that you wear. Some days you may uh, put too many layers on, and a few minutes into your ride you'll realize that you need to shed some. But again, that is okay, and that is also why like the previous slide, we want to check the weather in advance. So moving on to gloves. So sorry, back to helmets for a second. So some other options to pair with your helmet to keep you warm on those colder rides can be a cycling cap, a beanie, or even a baklava that you are able to put on underneath your helmet. Earmuffs can also be a helpful addition on some of those colder days to keep your ears warm. So, some other gear that can be helpful to bring is a rain jacket, as mentioned. During the fall, it is common that we will get a lot of rain. So, bringing a rain jacket is going to be super helpful to have on hand, even if there isn't rain in the forecast, honestly. So, fall weather is uncertain. So, keeping a light rain jacket in your bag can help keep you somewhat dry if it starts to rain. There are also cycling ponchos, which are another good option to bring along. They're often big enough to stretch over the handlebars, which will keep your hands pretty dry and protected from some of that cold rain. So moving on to gloves. So gloves are super helpful for fall riding because that cool breeze that you feel will intensify as you ride and can potentially cause numbing of the hands. So cycling gloves or winter gloves can prevent this from happening. You can also add hand warmers inside of your gloves for added warmth, or multiple gloves, as I mentioned earlier, with layers. So having some thicker gloves for the AM, and probably later on in the day as it warms up, having some thinner gloves. But again, that is definitely optional. So similar to your hands, your toes may feel the effect of the cold as well, especially if you're wearing sneakers. You can add toe warmers in your shoes to keep them warm, or invest in wool socks or inserts, which are usually thick and provide warmth on those cold rides. So another option, if you end up riding in the rain, are shoe covers or toe covers. These are usually waterproof and keep the elements off your shoes, which ultimately are keeping your feet warm as well. So moving on to bike bags. So bike bags such as panniers, handlebar, or frame bags can be helpful for transporting your items around and keeping the load off of your back. So having essentials like snacks, phone, your keys, or any other thing else that you want to have handy in an easy to reach place such as a handlebar bag can make your ride much more enjoyable, and can prevent you from having to stop and dig in a bag to retrieve them. So again, having these at an easy reach, such as in a handlebar bag, um, will be a lot more helpful than like having it in a book bag where you might have to stop and pull over in order to get your phone out or something if you need to. So fall is a great time to carry around additional layers, as I mentioned. So it is also a great time to explore different options for carrying things on your bike. So again, taking a look at panniers, which are often mounted to racks that are on your bike, um, which can ultimately get some of that weight off of your bike, off of your back. So next, we'll talk about fenders. So fenders can be helpful to have on your bike just in case it rains. So the rainwater on the ground will often sling up from the tires onto the rider. So having front and or rear fenders will help keep you a little drier if you happen to be riding in the rain or right after it has rained. So you have the option of getting fenders that are installed to mounting points on your bike frame, or removable fenders that attach to the seat post or your fork, which uses like clasp or zip ties to attach them and remove them. So your local bike shop often has these options for you. You can even search online for different options or colors that suit your style. So as mentioned earlier, lights are going to be super helpful to have on hand just in case it rains. Oh, sorry, just in case you end up riding as it gets dark. You can often outfit your bike with white and rear lights, or add some fun colors using LED lights. Lights with higher lumens will generally be brighter and can give you more visibility on areas without street or trail lights. So lastly, there are a number of different reflective gear and clothing that can be added with lights to help you be more visible when riding at night. So you can find bags, jackets, and pants, straps, and other reflectors uh, that can be helpful to adding along with lights to help you be more visible. So, and then I just wrap the fall weather gear and accessories up just by giving a few suggestions. So, lighter colors are going to help you be more visible. So, this is why you often see construction workers or crossing guards in bright neon yellow or orange clothing. So, if you want to be more visible, consider wearing lighter and brighter colors as well. So, if you do decide to wear dark clothing, again, consider adding some reflective materials to help you be seen. So, the last thing to note is that like wearing a backpack will often lead to like a really sweaty back. So if you are riding when it's really warm, you may get to your destination and realize that your like back is soaked. So again, to avoid this, consider outfitting your bike with panniers or bags, or choosing a backpack with proper air circulation in the back that will kind of circulate and cool your back down, rather than some bags that don't have much circulation. So that is it for fall weather gear and accessories. In the next slide, we will talk about ways to waterproof items. So again, this is fall is generally a rainy season, so waterproofing your items so they aren't getting damaged or wet can be super helpful during this time. So here are a few tips for waterproofing items. So a few ways to protect valuable items is by using waterproof bags. A number of the bags that I mentioned earlier, such as panniers and handlebar bags, are offered in waterproof options as well. So if you don't already have one, you can waterproof items uh, by putting them in bags, such as like a Ziploc bag, inside of the bag that is not waterproof to keep them dry. So your saddle can also be waterproof, so you aren't soaking your pants as you ride. Um, there are bicycle seat covers that slip on over your seat to protect it from the rain and other elements, just like what's shown in the image there. This will be extremely helpful for saddles that absorb water. So another option is to use an old grocery bag to cover your saddle by placing it over the seat and then tying it underneath. This is a real inexpensive way to waterproof your saddle if you do have one that absorbs water, or you have left your bike outside and it rains, and rather than just sitting on it and just taking a bag or one of these seat covers and putting it over it. So, lastly, there are some waterproofing sprays on the market that you can find to waterproof items like jackets or bags, which are ultimately water shields and would repel water. So you may have to add your waterproofing spray every so often, especially if you're riding in the rain often. But that is another way to waterproof some items. So consider using some of these options this fall to keep you and your items dry. Cool. And I think this is going to be one of the most helpful slides for this presentation, which is going to be hazards to watch for and hazards and things to keep an eye out for and to avoid. So, the number one thing on the list is, of course, rain. So, rain can make it hard to see and can make road conditions hard to navigate. So, as mentioned earlier, check the weather in advance so you are prepared and have all the necessary gear and items with you on your ride. One suggestion is to bring an extra set of clothes or leave them at your destination just in case you get caught in the rain and end up with wet clothes, because honestly, no one wants to go the entire day with wet clothes. So next, as the trees begin to thin out, you'll want to keep an eye out for piles of leaves on the roads and the trails, and do your best to avoid them. Wet leaves can be super slippery when riding over them, so if possible, try avoiding piles of leaves or at least turning while riding over them. So leaves can also hide objects on the roads or trails, such as potholes, glass, sharp rocks, and much more. So again, this is another hazard that leaves cause in the fall season. So it can often hide objects as well underneath them. So metal grates in the ground can also be dangerous to ride over in the rain. They're often slippery, and your wheel has the potential to get caught in some of the gaps if they are thin enough, if you are riding parallel to them. So leaves can also hide some of these metal grates, so take precaution as you approach them. Shoot. So glass can be definitely harder to see in the rain, but if you do happen to see one piece of glass, there's likely that there are more pieces nearby, so take precaution. So high winds can be a hazard as well during the fall. When riding in traffic, strong winds may try to force you off of your path and possibly into traffic. Large trucks, when passing, can also give this same effect of trying to take you off your path. You may need to pull over and give a moment for winds to decrease, or if you feel the winds increasing, holding firmly on your handlebars with both hands will allow you to maintain control of your bike. So lastly, hydroplaning. So hydroplaning is when a tire rides on a cushion of water, resulting in a sudden and total loss of traction. Riding in the rain and wet weather can still be dangerous. So hitting potholes, as I mentioned, and slick surfaces can cause a sudden loss of control and a crash before the rider even knows what happened. So be alert when riding in wet weather, riding slower, and increase the distance between cars and other riders to give you more time to react. So if you start to hydroplane or lose control of the back wheel, it is recommended not to do any sudden braking or turns. So if riding in these conditions is unbearable, you can also turn into a pedestrian and walk your bike. Or a few other options are hopping on the bus or train to get you the rest of the way to your destination. Or you can always lock up your bike and come back for it later. So the last thing that I like to cover is what to do after your ride. So post-ride tips. So a few of these tips are some suggestions that I have, but again, doing whatever you would normally do on a cold day when you come in, I think would be helpful. So taking a minute to warm up. So sometimes just sitting and doing nothing or sitting near a heater or some sort can speed up the process, but ideally, when you're getting in, you just want to take some time to warm up, especially on some of those colder days. So a post-ride snack is always going to be helpful. It's like a small celebration to getting to where you need to go. So if you get caught in the rain, once you get back indoors or get in some shelter, I recommend drying your bike off. So instead of letting that rainwater just sit on there, wiping your bike down and drying it off completely can be super helpful for preserving your bike and all the parts on there. So wipe your bike down because again, that rainwater can cause rust on your bike as well. So the next thing is going to be cleaning and re-lubing your chain. So wiping off your chain and re-lubing it. So wet chain lube is going to be helpful. There's a few different chain lubes out there. There's wet chain lube and there's dry chain lube. Wet chain lube is going to be helpful for retaining um, some of that lube on your chain if you happen to get caught in the rain. But if you aren't doing any riding in the rain, then dry chain lube is probably going to be your best bet. So again, this is going to be helpful for doing before and after some of those rainy rides, because again, on those rainy days, it would tend to strip some of that lube from your chain. So relubing it after you come back in and wipe your bike down is going to be super helpful. The next thing that all that is has always warmed me up is a hot cup of coffee, hot chocolate, or some tea. This is going to be super helpful for warming you up, warming your hands up as well as you hold the cup as well. A few other options are a hot shower to warm you up, or just changing your clothes. I've often found it helpful just to put a change of clothes in the dryer. So as I get out of the shower, putting on some warm clothes is definitely going to be super helpful for warming me up after my ride. So again, these are all suggestions, so feel free to take any if you like. But again, doing what you would do on a normal cold day if you've been walking or biking out in some of that cold weather is going to be helpful. Also, if you have any other biking questions that you would like to ask, I'd be happy to answer them now, or you can reach out to me by emailing bikeambassadors@waba.org.
For skidding, it's the same thing on a bicycle as it is in other vehicles. Don't do anything sudden. Just like have it go. Like you will at the end of the patch, or like when you slow down enough, like your rear wheel will get traction again. There will be a resolution. Likely, if you don't do anything to change what is currently happening, you'll be fine. It's folks tend to crash their bike, their car when they do the panic and go, oh crap, I just lost control, and they slam the brakes on, and then your rear wheel doesn't have any traction with the ground, and so just roll with it, which I know can be hard. Yeah, so let's roll with it, like no brakes. Don't try to change your direction. Like your momentum will very likely keep you safe, and you can probably get, if you need to fall, you can probably get to a point where you're in enough of control that you're no longer in the panic mode and you can maybe slow down some and do some sort of controlled stop. But in the middle, when you have no traction, is not a point at which you can do a controlled fall.
And thank you all for joining. We look forward to seeing you next time. See ya.